Dobrý den, hello. Welcome for our regular Monday linguistic talks. This time we will leave psycholinguistics, I think, and we'll turn to legal language for some specific purposes. And I'm really interested what kind of specialties we can face there and how to solve them.
Thank you for the invitation. My name is Jakub Drápal. I'm a PI of the project. And one thing you should know about me is that I like to punish people. Or in other words, I like to study how we should punish people. So how we should impose sentences and how courts impose sentences and how we can actually improve how to do that. For decades, centuries, these questions were asked: what is a just sentence? How can we lead judges to impose just sentence? And the solution we came up with is that we need to give judges an important discretion, a leeway in how they deal with a combination of various factors which cannot be easily foreseen. So we talk about individualization to the specific offender, to the specific case, and as a result, a sentence is imposed. But as a result of providing judges an important leeway, judges decide differently. So Judge A imposes a very different sentence than Judge B. Just recently, we ran an experiment with 900 prosecutors in Czechia, and in the same case, they would impose a sentence from 2 years to 7 years. So whether you go to prison for 2 or 7 years depends upon which prosecutor or judge you get. So good luck. So we can identify disparities. We want to also identify possible discrimination, so there's bias. And we also want to understand why judges are deciding the way they are deciding. So what role they assign to individual factors? Do they focus more on the offender or the offense, and so on? And there are a multitude of questions that we would like to know that we're debating in sentencing research, and we still know rather little about. And when trying to answer these questions, what was the problem is why we don't yet have the sufficiently good answers is that the data in sentencing research are scarce. So typically, what researchers would use is data collected by states. So you would have the number of the section from which the offender was found guilty of. So, for example, theft. Well, that's important. It's important to know that someone was found guilty of theft and not of murder. But there's a huge variation within theft. That's why we provide judges the leeway. And when we looked at how the best studies are actually dealing with this problem, they are not dealing with it often at all. So, for example, they take all drunk driving as the same. And then they try to identify whether there are disparities, bias. And I've done some of these studies. I try to emphasize the limitations, but basically you cannot properly identify many of the questions you want if you simply have insufficiently detailed data. And so the idea behind this project is that there is not only data scarcity, but also data abundance. And the abundance is reflected in court verdicts and in criminal cases in so-called factual statements. So if you were found guilty at some point, or if you might be found guilty at some point, the court will describe in detail what you committed, what you were found guilty of. It's called a factual statement. It's contained in each and every criminal verdict, and it should be rather a simple description, emotionless, and it's also authoritative. So the court says, I'm basing my decision on this behavior of which I'm finding you guilty. Of course, there might be possible limitations. We can ask, do they really reflect reality and so on, but let's leave it more for criminologists at this point. And just a short mention before you're thinking, okay, so why do we start with factual statements and with actual behavior? Why not go with reasoning? Because judges also have to provide reasoning. Well, the reason why not to use reasoning is that the quality is very low. So we actually measured quality of reasoning for imposed sentences, and you cannot understand why judges impose sentences based on the reasons they provide. So you have to go to the original data, you have to go to what offense was committed and who was the offender and to the characteristics of the offender, and then try to decipher it. But the problem that we're facing now here is, okay, so we have factual statements that look like that, but it's an unstructured text. And there are two problems. One of them is that we do not know what information will be included in the text, and we don't know what values the text might acquire. And that's where we basically coming to the NLP stage, in which I will give Ivana the floor. And before mentioning it, I will just show that at this point, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, this approach might actually revolutionize sentencing, because in the countries highlighted in black, court verdicts are published online. So you can easily download them, you can easily extract the case facts and work with them. And in the social sciences in Central and Eastern Europe, we're often lagging behind. And I think as in sentencing research, this is actually one of the possibilities to go beyond what's the best knowledge in the West. And by that, I give the floor to Ivana.
Okay, thank you, Jakub, for the introduction. So for the remainder of this lecture, I will be talking about a pipeline that we designed to extract important information from the factual parts of the court verdicts. So there are a lot of, or there are several subtasks included in this larger tasks. So I will try to, I will list them, tell you a bit about them, and then go a bit into detail about the individual problems that we are facing when designing it. One thing that I would like to say is that this is still work in progress. So we've already done enough, I would say, to already have some lessons learned, and to now also be able to talk about some takeaways from the experiments that we have done. But also we are very much open to feedback if you have any. So it's yeah, we have the methodology designed, but we are still polishing the details and the actual setup. Also, what I would like to say is that we're here working with court verdicts, but we believe that the sort of pipeline that we are designing could actually help researchers also in other areas, not just in legal, because what we are trying to do is that we are working with a large collection of verdicts, which are somehow standardized. They have a similar form, contain similar information, and we are trying to build a data set ready for a statistical analysis. And this is probably a thing that that could be useful for researchers also from other areas, provided that they are working with texts of similar structure or some documents. For example, I don't know, it could be even medical records or something similar. Where a similar design could probably be used. So let's get into it. So what the pipeline is supposed to do is that it's supposed to take in a collection of court verdicts, also some expert information about what could roughly be in there. And then we are doing several things. First of all, we have to detect the factual part that Jakub was previously talking about, to get the one sentence from the verdict where we have a list of things that the person who committed a crime, a list of things that the person did. Then a second step that we do is that we classify this statement. We classify it to detect what kind of crime or what kind of offense is it, because there are different kinds of information included in offenses related to driving or in thefts or murders. So we first classify it, and only then we try to extract information. The extraction happens by first defining an annotation scheme, and then doing the actual annotation, and finally standardizing the values to be able to get a data set for statistical analysis. By that, I mean a flat data set where values are standardized to fit into categories or have some sort of formatting to be able to use as, for example, numerical variables for the analysis. So let's look at an example of the data that we're dealing with. So for the experiments that we have done so far, we're always working with Slovak data. This is what a court verdict looks like, and the part here is the fact sentence that we have to first extract to be able to proceed with the extraction. The extraction of the factual statement is we did it in two ways. We used regular expressions and large language models for the extraction. What helped a lot was that the factual statement is actually divided by a different sparing typography. So this weird kind of spaced lettering. So that helped us a lot. But we also used a large language model instructed with some examples of what the statement looks like, and overall this method worked pretty well. We were comparing to manual annotation where students extracted those statements for us, and we got pretty high extraction rates. So that's the first step, and we proceed from there. In the second step, we classify the statement into one of the categories. So first of all, we wanted to get into the category of traffic-related offenses, because the lawyers in our team knew that the verdicts or the statements have quite a simple structure. So we wanted to start with the simpler stuff and only then proceed with the more difficult ones. And within the traffic-related offenses, there are five more categories that we were trying to distinguish. So driving despite ban, driving under influence of some substance, then traffic crime with harmful consequence, and some other traffic crime. Also, the last category was when the statement was actually misplaced in the traffic-related category. Because what we actually did was that we were making the classification in two steps. First, we were just deciding whether it's actually a traffic-related crime or not. For that, we also had some filtering based on the paragraph or the legal, the law paragraph that the person was convicted from. So that was first the binary filter, and then a classification into more granular categories. We were again using LLMs here for the classification, and we evaluated the results with manual annotations that was performed by law students for us. And we always had two annotations per one sentence. Yeah, and here you can see the result against the human annotators. So with some like tuning of the prompts, we were able to get quite high results here. So we moved into the next part of the annotation pipeline where we actually do the annotation. This was just the setup to even have texts of similar kinds for further processing. So now when we are in the situation that we have a collection of factual statements from one category, let's say drunk driving, what we want to do is that we want to create a data set where we would see when the crime happened, when the drunk driving happened, what kind of substance was there, how much of it, because that's of course important. If there was some related behavior with it, and yeah, there can be different things that the expert who is accessing this pipeline and wants to use it can actually define in the first place. So a list of attributes where the expert defines the initial setup. A method that we are using is that if either we don't have such an expert, we're dealing with a crime category that maybe is just a small one where we don't really know what's supposed to be there, or when we have just a few initial attributes and we want to see what more is actually included in those statements, we designed a data-driven pipeline where we are not actually giving any user input, and the processing is happening just by inducing from the data itself. So here is an illustration of what is happening in the data-driven method. So what we are trying to do here is that we have the court verdicts or the statements extracted from them, and we process them in batches. And always after every batch, we use a large language model to give us a list of attributes that are present in all of these processed verdicts. And once these attributes are extracted, we ask what was there that's not captured by this list. So what is some extra information? And when this extra information is proposed, we try to run it on the rest of the verdicts that were not processed yet, to see whether maybe this was just an exception that's maybe in 1% of the data, because then we don't really care about such an attribute, because that would be too sparse, or whether it's something that is actually more frequent, and whether that's another candidate for extraction. So when we do this, when we run this extraction or this attribute exploration, let's say, when we do it for the driving under influence category of crimes, what we can see here is in the left column, those are the attributes that we knew from the beginning from a lawyer or that looked in the data that we know that we should be looking for. And in the second column, we have the attributes that are new, that are just induced from the data, because after seeing so many of the examples, those are the attributes that consistently appear there. We also try to run the data-driven method without the expert-based input, and actually got a pretty similar list of attributes. One structural difference that we observed was that the LLMs propose attribute names that are a bit more structured. So, for example, they would divide the value and unit of the amount, whereas as a person, you just say that you want to know how much, and you don't think about maybe dividing it into two columns. So there are actually benefits to letting the data decide, because this more structured data is the more structured output is then more suitable for further processing. So now that we know what to look for, what attributes to look for, we can view the annotation task that we can view it in two ways, either as a tagging task. So a task where if you want this task to be performed by a person, you tell them read the sentence and select the part that corresponds to a certain attribute, and also for that attribute maybe select a category. And similarly, if we want to give this task to a large language model, we can tell it to create an XML-like text sentence. So to add XML-like tags into the sentence to, let's say, resemble this selection of spans by a human. So that's one way of looking at this problem. Another way is to look at it as a copying task. So rather than telling, and now this also could, in a similar way, be given to a person to just like copy and paste parts of the text to someplace else. And for the LLM, this corresponds with the task of creating a JSON and extracting parts of the text into certain attributes of the JSON output. So those are the two ways how to look at the selection of attributes. And then there is another step, and that is to then select a class or some sort of formatted value for these selected attributes. So for example, if I select that the driver was driving under the influence of ethanol or alcohol, I should have an option somewhere to be able to say that these are the same things. So both of these have to be classified as alcohol. And for this, we also provide a list of possible values for the given attributes. For some attributes, it makes sense to do the classification. So, for example, for the substances, we know, let's say, 10 most frequent substances that people can use while driving. So it makes sense to classify the information into one of these classes. And but for others, like for example dates or just some strings that are supposed to mean a location, there maybe it just makes sense to change the formatting or put it in the nominative or something else. These rules, they can again be defined initially by a person who wants to have this data set and they know what kind of categories they want to see in the output, or it can again be induced from the data. Now we have some results here, and those are the results for the when we look at the problem as the two different tasks, so either as the tagging task or the extraction tasks. Extraction task, I was interested in seeing how well are large language models able to perform this task. And now we are not yet comparing it to human evaluation, but just there are some validation rules that we can apply to see whether it even makes sense, the output of the LLM. So if we wanted to output JSON, we can check whether it's actually JSON, whether it has the attributes that are allowed. The same way with the text, with the text, we can check if it complies with the XML schema, or whether there are some mismatches. What we see here is there are always three numbers, and that's because we ran the same thing for three language models, for the GPT-5.1, 5 mini, and for a model by OpenAI that can run locally. So we we're interested in the local model, especially for later when we will be working with court verdicts that are not publicly available and we cannot easily upload them to cloud. With the Slovak data, those are online, so there is no issue there. But then if we work with Czech data in the future, we will have to be using models that are running on our machines. So there the last results are pretty relevant. And actually what we see here is that the local models is one where we see some problems. So the format validation, that means that we were checking, just like some technical rules, and there all of the models work pretty well. But the text validation that we were trying to measure whether by applying the tags in the text, whether the input is not altered in a way, because in a tagging task, what you want is to have the input unchanged and just add the tag attributes. And we were checking whether maybe some of the content goes missing, or if there are some repetitions or something. And actually for the GPT-5.1 model, it wasn't a problem. There really it seems that just the language model is given the input, just adds the tags and doesn't skip anything and doesn't add anything extra. With the GPT-5 Mini, it happens sometimes, but with the local model, it happened very frequently. So it's something that we will definitely have to work with in the future. Also, let's see, the local models also improve a lot, and we can try different ones. But from this exercise, we see that it's really important to do these automatic validations and also use them as a feedback for when we are designing this pipeline, because those are things that really can be just very easily checked. And when one of these validation rules is breached, we can just run the same extraction again and telling the model that there was a mistake and asking it to do it better. And from our experience, that is a mechanism that can work quite well. Here another set of numbers, and those are numbers for class consistency. So as I was saying, we are for the input text, we are selecting the spans of text that mean a certain attribute, and for each attribute we are selecting values or classes. And if we run the very same thing, the very same prompt twice for the same model, we can measure some sort of internal consistency, because we know that models have a tendency to output a different thing every time we run them. And if it's vastly different, if it's a different class every time, then of course it's a problem. So we wanted to see how much of a problem it actually is. And it's not that we actually see that the consistency is quite high. These are Cohen's kappas that we are reporting, and the values are quite high. So we, of course, we will look into the details of when there are issues. But for example, and I will be showing it later, when we compare it to the internal or the consistency between human annotators, the human one is lower quite significantly, because it seems like an easy task, but it's actually not for the LLM, but even more not for the people who are doing it, because it's quite like a tiring and like mentally difficult task to be annotating tens of sentences or maybe even more. So another way to look at the task that we are trying to solve is also as like a dual problem between instructing the large language model to do something and instructing a person to do something, because we are quite really being careful with the evaluation, because we know that we don't want to just blindly use large language models because they output something. We really want to make sure that they do it well. And that's why we need a lot of human annotations. And it's not a problem. We have quite a lot of students that can do the annotation work for us, but the problem is how to actually set up the annotation task in a way that the annotation results make sense, because we already did several runs, and only after the run is finished, we see that there are some issues that we didn't foresee, that really the task is quite difficult. And if you do not provide instructions that are clear enough, the students just select different things for different spans. For example, if there are multiple occurrences of similar information, or if the classes aren't clear enough, when you're designing it, you think it's clear, but it's just everybody puts their own perspective into it. So that's why when we are working on improving the prompts for the LLMs, we want to connect it to also improving the annotation guidelines for the students, so that we're really giving the same task to both of these, to the humans and also to the models. Right now, what we have is that we have like 17 pages of annotation instructions for the students, and one big prompt that we are optimizing. The students are doing the annotations in the Inception software, where they can, just as I was saying, they can select parts of text and select values for the selected parts. And in the initial setup, we also inform the students of exactly how the annotation is supposed to work, what they should do. And on the second run, we got quite significantly better results than on the first one. And what we can also observe, that's the thing that I mentioned already, that we can measure consistency both for two model calls and for the two annotators. So the inter-annotator agreement is, especially for some attributes, was really quite low, around 0.3. And there we think it was probably because we just didn't define the instructions clear enough, that we will see it in more detail in a bit. But definitely what played a role was that the students, we had them annotate quite a lot of sentences, and there were maybe 10 different tags or 10 different attributes that they had to select for every sentence. So we believe that most of these inconsistencies were actually just like human errors, just that the person annotating just skipped one of the attributes because there were just too many, and the annotation software didn't prevent them from actually skipping the attribute. So we think that probably this is one thing that is really necessary to improve, to actually try to make the annotation software help the students as much as possible and prevent these errors that kind of make the data not completely useless, but problematic. And there are probably some things in the annotation software that can be done. Similarly, for the large language models, if we see that there are some compulsory attributes and the model didn't extract them, we can check for that easily, and if that's the case, then just rerun it. But it's important to know that these things can happen both to artificial intelligence and to people. And that's why when later I will be showing results against human annotators, it had to be taken with a grain of salt also, because there can just be errors in the human annotated data. Also, one thing that I want to mention is how when we detect some errors in the final data, like how we are trying to improve the results. So for after the first run of the human annotation, we looked, all of us in the team, or 3 of us, we looked into the data, and when there was an annotator mismatch, we just decided which of the annotator is correct, or whether there is an additional mistake. So we have this like curated version of the data. But later, after more evaluation, we found out that even in these curated versions, there were some mistakes even there. Although it was already a double check, it still had some problems. And for the prompt improvement, what we do is that we can improve it by learning from user feedback. I will be showing you in a moment like an interaction interaction interface where a user can actually modify the values that happen or modify the results of the annotation task. And another way of improving the prompts is it's a consistency refinement, where we want to be using one of the optimization algorithms for automatically improving the prompt. Yeah, so here are the results of one of the earlier experiments where we were using Gemini 2.5 Flash as a closed commercial model, and Apparatus 70 billion parameters as an open source local one. And here we see the accuracy on the mentioned for the mentioned attributes, and we also see the inter-annotator agreement between those 2 students. Here we see that different models have a problem with different attributes. Maybe again because the instructions were not clear enough, or because the tags were misplaced, and the selected part of the text didn't match between the human annotator and the model. Yeah, this is the kappa for the same attributes. Yeah, so here we would be hoping for much better results, because these are especially for some of the attributes we are trying to polish the pipeline so that it has we don't really have a target how much accuracy we are looking for, but this definitely can be improved. And what we are now focusing on quite a bit is the user interaction, because we think that actually many of the errors, it's difficult to foresee them in a general way. But then when if we design a mechanism where we can show the user what's happening, that then by some sort of feedback and user interaction, we can make the necessary improvement more easier, in an easier way. So the main takeaways from these experiments is that the main cause of errors is the misplaced text. So it's not even the classification or the formatting. That's usually quite reliable, but actually the selection of the text, that's where the errors mostly come from. On the other hand, one thing that the LLMs do quite well is that they have a world knowledge that people not necessarily have. So even in cases where maybe not everybody knows that some long name acid is actually cannabis, or that some car model is a van and it's not a personal car. So those are the couple examples where we can actually benefit from the fact that the LLMs just know a lot about the world. And what we did not really observe was like hallucination in the text in a way that there would be just some extra pieces of information coming out of nowhere. That wasn't really happening for the experiments that we made. But what was happening were just omissions, that a tag should be there and it's not. So that's something that we have to be focusing on, and we will be using some automatic repair mechanism for that. Also, another thing that we are now focusing on is like internal relationships between the entities, because we are not just extracting independent pieces of information. They have some structure, they have some hierarchy. So being able to model that would help quite significantly. And what's then necessary when if we have such a representation of the sentence of the text entities, to then be able to flatten it into actually having the data set that we were looking for in the first place. Here, just a quick slide on what could it look like if we wanted to also model the hierarchy with the XML-like tags. So, especially for the cases where we have like multiple substances present in the drunk driving offense and multiple measurements, then really being able to connect which measurement was which substance and how what value, that could be helpful. Yeah, and now let me show you the concept that we are now thinking of, the human assistance in this annotation process. So what I was showing before is, let's say, an automatic way of prompting the LLM to do something, and let's see how we could have a user step into this process. So yeah, I will show it on this schema. So what I was showing so far was that we were starting with the factual statements, and we were looking for what attributes are there. In that way, we created some attribute schema and used it for extraction. Then in the second step, we were standardizing these extracted spans, and we were coming up with a list of allowed values for the attributes. And then we used this as a second step, extraction, a result of which is already a data set where we have extracted attributes and their standardized values. And now there is the interaction module where user can interfere or step into the process and say that, for example, these two classes this is a too granular distinction, and we want to have merge something. I will show it. Yeah, I will show it here because this is like a prototype of human user interaction module. So we think that it's important, if we are trying to design a semi-automatic pipeline, that it's important to show the user what's happening there. So for him to be able to see that what parts of the sentence were selected and what values they have. So in an interface like this, it's possible to browse through individual sentences, even communicate with an LLM agent running behind, and to make changes if necessary. Here, it's possible to browse through individual attributes and see the values of individual texts. And for example, by browsing through this, you can see that, okay, we are looking for a reason for the traffic check, and we have only 3 options: suspected intoxication, traffic violation, and traffic check. And you think maybe dangerous driving should be another class. So we are thinking of this as an agent-based system where you can also say this information to a model running behind that has access to a certain tools that can be used to modify the input value schema. So there is an agent that has access to tools that can be applied to the extracted data, and that can also be applied to the input instructions. And yeah, here is the list of the things that it's just a work in progress. It's sort of like a list of options that the interaction agent has. So it's possible to either look at the values of the data, and or to just browse through sentences that contain a certain word or a certain tag or a certain value. And the probably most important tool that we are implementing now is the possibility to really edit the data, to actually make some necessary changes. Yeah, and so after the interaction. After the interaction phase, what we should be left with is the improved annotation schema that's used for the extraction of a data set, where you can see the original text, the spans, and the identified values. Also, a mirroring annotation guidelines that can be used for that can be given to people to actually do the same task manually, and some validation and consistency metrics for an idea of how this process went. And now for the next steps.
What to do with this information? First, this is information only about the committed offense. So we need additional information, which typically is contained in administrative data sets. So there's criminal records data about the proceedings, and so on. So we can easily link it together. And once we link it, maybe that's a bit easier, thanks. Once we link it, we can do then almost anything we want to. So we can start with some simpler regression models, and then the questions we want to find answers to are just unstoppable. So think, for example, of, are judges becoming more harsher? Are they becoming harsher over time or not? This is a question which in England and Wales, there are multiple researchers, they have no idea. And the underlying reason why is because they don't have the sufficiently detailed data. Is it because the thefts are more serious or not? And if we don't have the detailed data, we cannot provide answers to these questions. We can analyze disparities across regions. From some experiments, we, for example, know that if you want to steal, go to Svitavy or Světlá nad Sázavu, but don't go to Brno Město. That's definitely a no-go. But if we want to identify what are the sources, is the source a judge? Is it a court culture, or is it something completely different, and so on? If we want to find out what proportion of sentence is determined by the person of the offender, so previous convictions, and so on, about the offense, or even within the offense, how much is based on harm, so what happened, and how much is based on culpability, what the offender wanted to do. And so we have no idea about these questions, or we don't have a good idea. And I think that with sufficiently detailed data sets, we could get much further in this respect. What I find it will be a really cool application of these data is our comparative studies, because so far we had a problem in any comparative sentencing or criminological study is that each country defines criminal offenses differently. So theft in Finland is something different than theft in Czechia. And well, how do we overcome it? Well, we don't have to go from the top, but we can go from the bottom. So we can, for example, look at only or with drunk driving, we can very easily identify drunk driving with a certain amount of alcohol and so on, and then compare only the same or very similar behaviors, and then we can compare what sentences are imposed, and then we can start asking the questions, why is it so, and whether, for example, the sentencing rationales that individual countries emphasize are actually true or not. So Finland is boasting for the last 45 years about proportionality being the guiding principle there, and yet is it so? We do not know. Well, we hope to know in 2 or 3 years because we're working with Finnish. So, and another thing that we're thinking of after we identify both, let's say, the factors within each offenses. We want to cluster them then together, or in another approach, take a thematic analysis and run an LLM-assisted thematic analysis and try to come up with behaviors which are typically happening. Because if you are following a bit discussion about criminalization or decriminalization of various behaviors, you might have come up with a problem, or like you might have seen a problem that we actually do not know which behaviors are criminalized and of which behaviors offenders are found guilty of. Take, for example, a thing that has been discussed over the last few years, revenge porn, especially when LLMs were used to generate it. There are multiple offenses within which this behavior could have been, the offender committed, who did it, could have been found guilty of, yet we have no way of knowing whether actually courts found anyone guilty of this behavior and under what offense and so on. An illustration, when we did a few years ago a thematic analysis of cybercrime by hand, we discovered that within the offense definition for cybercrime, there was actually a group of cases in which some offenders were using a metal tool to open a video gaming machine and were just pushing some sensor and putting money in there all the time so that they could play repeatedly. And no one foreseen that this behavior should be subsumed within this offense definition, and no one actually knew that this behavior is being criminalized within this subsection. And so we might be actually criminalizing various behaviors which we have no idea about, and grouping the behavior, trying to come up with with a grouping of the behaviors could help us in understanding what's happening on the ground. And also, when we link it, we could suddenly comparatively look what behaviors are criminalized across individual individual countries in Europe, and again, go from the bottom to the top. I haven't mentioned it in the very beginning. I won't go the 34 slides back, but this is a work especially of Ivana, Clara, Tomáš, Honza, and a few other who are not in the room. But if you know of anyone who would like to become part of the project, there is one more week to apply for a PhD in sentencing. It's especially for the Czech context, it's rather well funded, and there is almost complete freedom. Just come up, if you can come up with a cool idea about how to reform sentencing, we're open to anyone from any discipline, including computational sciences, data science, and so on. And with that, we'll close. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any feedback, any ideas how we should proceed, what we should do, we'll be more than grateful for any such feedback. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the very interesting talk, which has led us to a slightly different topic than we used to talk about during the last session. So may I first open floor for discussion?
Thanks for a very nice presentation, all the parts, and inspiring one. I have one comment and maybe two questions. The comment is that I find it quite, let's say, funny that there are several teams at ÚFAL working on labeling spends using LLMs and working rather independendly than sharing this know-how. So, for example, you may be interested that there is a paper by our colleagues, Daniel Semin, Zdeněk Kasner, Ondřej Dušek, called Strategies for Span Labeling with Large Language Models, and maybe their method of logit match. You could use it, especially with the local models like GPT-OSS, where they prevented the mismatches there. And another project where we plan to do something similar is CZ Demos for AI, which I lead. And we can discuss it later. The question is, have you tried to lower the temperature? And then I expect that the self-consistency would increase as measured by kappa on slide 20. But what about then the accuracy as like on slide 22? How is it influenced by the temperature? And the second question, have you tried analyzing laws also, or any relations like yes?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so for the temperature, so the results for the consistency. The results for the consistency are on the models that only support so the GPT-5, GPT-5.1, that's with temperature 1. I think they only supported now the value of 1. So there we didn't experiment with it. And but for the yeah, we can definitely try that. It is the consistency was one of the last experiments that we just run as the final step, but definitely the temperature plays a role there, and it was with the value of 1. And the analysis of law, you mean what? Yeah.
Countries, but countries have different laws.
Yeah.
How automatically analyze the law, like using data.
I think that's for Jakub.
So that's the beauty of sentencing research. It's not about rules; it's about discretion. So most of the research in law focus on rules. So you want to subsume something within a category. Yet in sentencing, basically the law says so you have a sentencing range from 2 to 8 years, and you can go below. Sometimes you can go above, and you basically have no guidance as a judge. Some judges describe it as looking into a crystal ball when imposing a sentence. Some of them have really no idea how to do it, and there are no rules. There are few principles, and that's approximately it. So I think like the most of the legal LLM research I've seen focuses on the rules. So trying to translate the entire law into rules. And this is completely different because there cannot be any system basically, or there is no set system even in the law. So it's understanding what people do when they have a wide discretion and just very limited set of principles. I'm not sure whether yeah.
Thanks as well for a very inspiring talk, many technical details as well. I have maybe too many questions, and I had exactly the same comment as Martin had. So Fact Genie is definitely something that you need to look at. So my question is, of the many, maybe have you also considered asking questions instead of asking to do span annotation? And I mean, both asking LLMs and also humans. I think it's very much, it's very difficult to label a text with all the categories that you are expected to find there. But if you ask one question at a time, it would be rather trivial. So, for example, the refused to be tested thing, that's a binary value. So that should be very easy to, for the humans to extract, and also for the LLMs. And then I have like two suggestions how the kappa could be increased, and maybe you have the numbers already. One thing is for the humans, have you also considered the evaluation when only both of the humans provided the value? So I assume that you label it as a disagreement when one of them forgot the value. If you look only at the situation when both answered the question, then maybe the kappa could be higher, and also the kappas could be measured only after the value normalization, because that was one of your proposed last steps. So I was curious whether you have done this or not. Okay, so if you still remember the questions.
Yeah, so the kappa after the value the kappa reported was after value normalization.
Okay, so that's already after.
That's already after, yeah.
I see the values as kind of low. I would expect that.
That's why I was explaining so much about how difficult it was for the students, because it's we believe that it's low because really there are still errors even in the golden data. So I wanted to report it to just. It's an experiment that we did to kind of already give an idea. But I think especially where there was such a low inter-annotator agreement between the two people, there still is probably some error also there. Because otherwise, when we were going through the data in more detail, there were there were usually not errors in just the classification of when I have a part of text that says that the person refused to drive, then the classified value of yes, refused to drive, that was almost always correct. Like just the classification, even if there are multiple of these classification tasks in one prompt, because we are trying to classify multiple things at once. The problem is not in the classification. It's usually in selecting a different part of the text. Because in the vanilla case, it works well. But then there are many cases where maybe it says that previously this person was already convicted from something, but now this. And
so the kappas are also considering the span and
Yeah.
not just the value.
Yeah.
And if you look at the values only, then you don't have the statistic. But I think
Yeah,
because for the follow-up analysis, you are actually only after the value itself. So the span is needed for debugging and to making sure that it was the information was extracted correctly. But for the statistical analysis, which would be based on the structured data, only the values are important.
Yeah. So we're deciding between two things. So initially we wanted to be just extracting the values, because exactly for these attributes where it's just like one question that you need to know about this. So did the person refuse to drive? Why was he checked? And stuff like that. We initially thought that we would just extract these values. But later on we proceeded with the tagging and just adding like tag properties to the tags, because what we are now focusing on is to enable the user to see what's happening there, and with the tagging it's easier.
One could still mix it, so you could first find the things that you are after, for example, through the tagging, then ask questions about, again, the plain text, and then like extracting the answer, and then locating the answer and labeling the answer as a second step. And I think that would be, for debugging purposes, for explainability, it is very important to highlight it in the original text, but it is probably a heavy task for everybody.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that, well, the orientation of the questions were not that much language, but I think that nevertheless, maybe you will have some specific issues concerning the language, isn't it? Or is it just, do you think that this is, I can imagine that with legal texts of a kind of, I don't know how to say that, conventional structure, this may raise questions of one kind, but do you think it's transferable to domains, or isn't it restricted by the domain? I mean, by the character of the domain, not just by the domain itself. Or it can be transferred to other domains.
So my guess is that this part is transferable to other domains, because it's the text that we want to analyze is basically a description of a behavior, and it's done by police, prosecutors, and judges whose minds work in mysterious ways, but still they're trying to describe a behavior in a real world. So they are not that much constrained by the terminology, or they are simply trying to show that grandson went to his grandmother, and underneath her pillow he took a bottle of within which there was some cash, and he stole it. And basically there is no law in there. It's just a description of behavior that from time to time happens to every one of us, and so I think that it could be applied equally in other domains. And as Ivana mentioned, I think that the idea that there's a description of something which is partially related to human behavior, partially is influenced by the domain sphere within which the domain works. And it's unstructured, and we need to extract information from it. I think this is just not applicable in so many other domains. When I think about medicine, when there is a crazy doctor who's writing everything in the file, it's completely unstructured. It sometimes has a certain structure, but not that much. So I think that it could be used in a way very similarly. And I would so I think it's not. specific to law, but one thing that we're thinking about, and I'm not exactly sure whether there's a good solution, and it's more related to language, or maybe the linguistics parts. So we want to show that it's also emotionless, and because it's also the concept behind it, that it's just a as objective description of behavior as possible. Yet, typically, if we want, for example, use some quality of words with which some emotions are linked, I guess that, for example, murder would have some emotion in itself, or like taking a stabbing might be considered emotionless, while for lawyers it is emotionless. But if I say that I took a knife and drove it through someone's heart, for me I don't care. Basically, it's like there is no emotion. But in the typical use of language, it's probably some emotion would be linked with driving a knife through someone's heart. So trying to distinguish whether the emotion is there or not, that's a linguistic part about which I'm not sure how to do at first.
Well, I didn't mean terms or terminology or lexicon. What I meant was conventional, whether maybe find a better word, conventional structures or conventional structuring as such, not just different terms, but it seems to me that maybe my impression that legal language has specific phenomena from as far as the structure is concerned, or yeah.
Thank you. I think this is linked to how laws are written. So there is a clear structure. So there is what should be in there. There should be some consequence of if someone does not do something, and so on. But and this is linked to what we talked about, that law is more about rules, and we have structure if there is a rule, while this is completely this is largely a different domain. So this is really a description. So we're not, if I would just go back to the example of the of how the court's verdict looks like, there are a lot of structures from which follows what, how one subsumes the behavior within the definition of the law, how it's everything's so even what is structured in the general information and so on. But then we come to the the factual sentence, and that's, in my opinion, I think that's completely ruleless. Well, maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, we have a raised hand from Tomáš Mráka. Can you try speaking? I think we should be able to hear
Hello, can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. My background is criminology, not language analytics. So my question will be towards that. I wanted to ask, how did you choose the verdicts or the text, and if there are, for example, appeals factored in, or if you're somehow pre-selecting the correct verdicts so that maybe there are no double verdicts, as in there's one, there was an appeal, there's another, and it's all the same case, but now it's doubled in the data. Did you factor that in somehow?
Yeah, thanks for a great question. Did not expect a criminologist to be here. So the advantage is that the Slovak Republic basically publishes almost all court verdicts, both first level and appellate ones. And actually what one could do is so that we are extracting for each of the individual decisions. So what would be possible then is to, for example, look what change in certain factor drives appellate courts to change a legal classification from one behavior to another, because there are, for some of the behaviors, there are a lot of disputes about whether it should be, for example, a grievous bodily harm by negligence or bodily harm intentional with grievous bodily injury as a negligent, and there are differences in how it's sentenced and so on. So at this point, we're mainly still focusing on extracting the information from the case facts, and the application of it will come hopefully soon. And at this point, we will definitely be looking at whether it's a final decision that acquired legal force, or whether it's it has been changed by an appellate court or not. But in the beginning, you also asked how we group the behaviors, and that's actually that's also interesting, because law criminalizes behaviors in a strange way. The behaviors are sometimes criminalized, for example, by the outcome. So if you drive, if you're under influence, you drive, and then you hit someone, or you hit a lamp, or you kill someone unintentionally, this will fall within different offense categories. But we're in the end, if we're interested in how sentences are imposed, if you are driving under influence, or if you break some other rule and there is some harmful consequence, we need to put these two together. And at other points, we need to distinguish behaviors which fall within the same legal category, but are of different behaviors. So, for example, typically there is an offense which is driving under influence, but its legal definition is endangering someone else under influence. So, if there is a construction and there is a drunk construction worker, and the drunk construction worker drops a bucket and it falls on someone, it's actually endangerment under influence. And if we would want to be extracting the same variables, we would come to a horrific conclusion, because we at the same time want to understand drunk driving and a crazy drunk construction worker dropping a bucket, and it will be impossible to put it into similar categories. So that's why we're introducing, let's say, behaviors which haven't yet been constructed, because not many people actually wanted to look at certain behaviors to some respect, irrespective of the legal classification. And this is actually something that the large language models were really great.
Thank you.